from our Toronto studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Zahra Syed. Our top story for today. President Joe Biden has called on Congress to swiftly return and address critical disaster relief funding following the catastrophic impact of Hurricane Milton. The disaster has left more than 3.4 million people without power in Florida and has caused deadly tornadoes with ongoing search and rescue operations. Speaking at the Eisenhower Executive Office building, Biden emphasized the urgency, particularly for the Small Business Administration, saying emergency funds must be approved immediately. Biden dismissed Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump's false claims about the aid distribution, saying victims would receive much-needed support. Trump had said victims would only receive $750 in aid from the Biden administration, and that the funds had been directed to migrants. Biden had estimated that several $billions will be needed for rebuilding and has called for additional congressional action post-November elections. The Federal Emergency Management Agency also will need extra resources to manage relief efforts.
And experts estimate that, and it's early estimates, it could be more, it could be less, but estimate that it caused damages around $50 billion from Hurricane Milton alone. Just alone, $50 billion.
Israeli forces fired at a watchtower used by the United Nations Peacekeepers in southern Lebanon, injuring 2 people. This is the second attack on UN facilities in the country. The White House has expressed deep concern over Israel's attacks on UN peacekeepers. A National Security Council spokesperson emphasized that Israel must prioritize the safety of United Nations personnel while conducting operations against Hezbollah infrastructure near the Blue Line. The Blue Line divides Lebanon from Israel and the Golan Heights, determining whether Israel has fully withdrawn from Lebanon. It has been described as temporary and not a border, but a line of withdrawal. Recent strikes have targeted the UN Interim Force, or the UNIFIL, in Lebanon's sites in Naqoura, damaging equipment and putting peacekeepers at risk. UNIFIL has condemned the attacks, reminding Israel of its obligations under international law to protect UN forces. Canada has also issued a statement of concern. A UN commission has condemned Israel for systematically targeting Gaza's healthcare system. It is describing it as a part of a broader campaign of war crimes and crimes against humanity. The report highlights relentless attacks on medical personnel and facilities, with severe consequences for the civilian population, particularly children. Navi Pillay, chair of the commission, urged Israel to cease its destruction of healthcare infrastructure, warning of long-lasting detrimental effects on health and well-being. The report found Israeli security forces have deliberately killed, detained, and tortured medical personnel. The commission investigated the killing of 5-year-old Hind Rajab, along with the shelling of a Palestinian Red Crescent Society ambulance and killing of 2 paramedics. It determined on reasonable grounds that the Israeli Army's 162nd Division operated in the area and was responsible for killing Rajab's family of 7 and the 2 paramedics. The commission also investigated the treatment of prisoners held by Palestinian armed groups. It called for the immediate release of all prisoners and adherence to international humanitarian law. Israel has killed at least 22 people in airstrikes in central Beirut and left 113 others injured in the past 24 hours. The strikes targeted densely populated neighborhoods, with the first hitting a building in the Noweri area and the second completely collapsing a structure on Fathallah Street. Reports indicate that the Israeli army aimed at Wafik Safa, a key Hezbollah figure involved in negotiations and external relations. This surge in airstrikes is part of Israel's ongoing campaign against Hezbollah, which has reportedly killed over 2,169 people, with 10,212 injured in Lebanon since September 23rd, according to the Lebanese Health Ministry. Despite global warnings of a potential regional war, Israel has intensified its military operations, heightening the tensions across the region. Israeli airstrikes have killed 63 Palestinians in Gaza, marking a week of intensified military action. On Thursday, 5 individuals were killed in an airstrike targeting a group in northern Gaza City, specifically in the Sheikh Radwan neighborhood. Witnesses reported drone strikes near the Omar Mosque, contributing to the death toll. Residents of the Jabalia refugee camp are trapped under total siege, unable to escape Israel's ongoing violence. Internet blackouts have left them feeling isolated, relying on neighbors for news amidst constant bombings. Israeli forces have launched a renewed assault on Gaza's north in recent days, as the military seemingly begins to implement what has been called the General's Plan. This aims to forcibly expel more than 400,000 Palestinians in the region. Forcible transfer is a war crime in international law. Jabalia camp, which Israeli forces have pummeled the area with airstrikes, is the first phase of this operation. Israel has killed at least 42,065 people and wounded 97,886 in Gaza since last October. The Israeli onslaught has displaced almost the entire population of Gaza amid an ongoing blockade that has led to severe shortages of food, clean water, and medicine. Israel is facing a genocide case at the International Court of Justice for its war and violence in Gaza. Protesters arrested for blocking Barclays Bank over Palestinian genocide investments. Details come after the break. Stay tuned, and we will be right back.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, and welcome to This Hijabi Life. Today we have Muna Abdullahi, that contestant on The Mole.
It's basically a game within a game within a game. Yeah, so right now I work in tech. I also love to travel. I also fly planes.
It's like you see people doing something and you're like, oh my God, that is so cool, but how can I actually do that?
If you don't have people like you in these spaces, that means there's not a system set up for you to already exist in these spaces.
As a Muslim living a lifestyle, you take your Islam with you wherever you go.
Yeah, I'm here to play a game, but I'm here to showcase and represent Muslim women. I know fully heartedly there's nobody else I want to be than a hijabi woman.
You have to speak up in order to prioritize your Muslim identity.
Every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on Muslim Network TV.
Welcome back. At least 12 protesters were arrested for blocking the entrance to Barclays Bank in Chicago. They are accusing it of funding the genocide in Palestine. Activists gathered to oppose the bank's significant investments, supporting 9 companies involved in military operations against Palestinians. These are over $2.5 billion and loans amounting to $7.6 billion. The companies include BAE Systems, Boeing, and Raytheon, which have all been linked to violence in the region. The protesters were later released hours later, continuing the call for Barclays to divest from these firms. A 24-year-old man from New Jersey has pleaded guilty to vandalizing the Center for Islamic Life at Rutgers University during the Eid al-Fitr Muslim holiday. Jacob Beecher of North Plainfield admitted to the federal hate crime of damaging religious property, which included stealing a Palestinian flag and a charity box while damaging prayer stones. The total cost of damage exceeds $5,000. He faces up to 3 years in prison and up to $250,000 in fines. Sentencing for Beecher is scheduled for next year. Observers say the incident highlights a troubling rise in anti-Muslim complaints in New Jersey. Americans will see a 2.5% cost of living adjustment to their benefit payments next year. The Social Security Administration has said benefits will cover more than 72.5 million Americans. While the cost of living adjustment will begin with benefits payable to nearly 68 million Social Security beneficiaries in January of 2025, increased payments to nearly 7.5 million recipients will begin on December 31st. The earnings limit for people reaching their full retirement age in 2025 will increase to $62,160. The earnings limit for workers younger than full retirement age will increase to $23,400. Former White House advisor Susan Rice has raised concerns over reported conversations between former President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Rice claims those conversations could violate the Logan Act, enacted in 1799, prohibits unauthorized American citizens from engaging in negotiations with foreign governments in conflict with the U.S. without prior approval. Rice's comments come after journalist Bob Woodward revealed that Trump allegedly has spoken with Putin at least 7 times since leaving office in January 2021. Trump's campaign has denied these allegations. However, the former president has openly praised his relationship with Putin and urged Republicans to oppose military aid to Ukraine. Rice said Trump's actions mirror accusations he made against former Secretary of State John Kerry for his private discussions with Iranian officials. Though rarely enforced, the Logan Act's implications add another layer to the ongoing scrutiny of Trump's post-presidency conduct. Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump is calling for CBS News to lose its broadcasting license. This is in the wake of a controversy involving 60 Minutes, which edited Democratic presidential nominee Vice President Kamala Harris's comments during its primetime election special. On Truth Social, Trump condemned the editing, calling it a giant fake news scam. He calls it was an attempt to make Harris appear more competent. Trump has called for taking away the network's license, alleging that the media is complicit in election interference. Speaking at the Detroit Economic Club, he called the incident potentially the single biggest scandal in broadcast history. FCC Chairwoman Jessica Rosenworcel criticized Trump's remarks, reaffirming the importance of media integrity. A recent report from the Center for Advanced Defense Studies reveals that the global pharmaceutical industry still relies on ingredients sourced from Chinese-occupied East Turkestan. Uyghur forced labor is prevalent in the region, which the Chinese government calls Xinjiang. Even U.S. agencies, including the FDA and USAID, are linked to suppliers there, despite U.S. laws banning such practices. The report highlights the oppressive conditions faced by the Uyghurs, including forced drug testing in internment camps. With 43 licensed pharmaceutical companies in eastern Turkestan, the region produces critical medications. However, with lack of enforcement, many products remain tied to forced labor. The center is urging U.S. federal agencies to evaluate their procurement practices to ensure compliance with anti-forced labor laws. Meanwhile, international pressure is mounting on companies benefiting from these abuses. The U.S. created and implemented the 2021 Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act that bans imports from Xinjiang unless certified as not made with forced labor. East Turkestan is a minor player in the pharma production industry in China, which is the world's largest active pharmaceutical ingredient producer and the world's second largest drug market. However, there are 43 licensed pharma companies in the region. The report says 76 pharma products exported from China are manufactured only in East Turkestan, exposing global supply chains to forced labor. This year's Nobel Peace Prize has gone to a movement of survivors of the 1945 U.S. atomic bombing of the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The group Nihon Hidankyo has been working to eliminate the nuclear bomb and for decades has represented hundreds of thousands of survivors of the bombings. The Nobel Committee said its efforts have helped establish a nuclear taboo, striving to achieve a world free of nuclear weapons. As Israel's war on Gaza marked the start of its second year last week, the Nobel Peace Prize nominations reflected the urgent humanitarian concerns tied to this crisis. At the top of the list is the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, or the UNRWA, recognized for its tireless efforts in providing aid to Palestinian refugees. Other notable contenders include the International Court of Justice, the International Criminal Court, and UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres. Palestinian journalists and various Israeli human rights organizations have also been nominated. Additionally, a joint nomination from Spain, Norway, and Ireland acknowledges their recognition of Palestinian statehood. While the Norwegian Nobel Institute keeps nominations confidential, many nominators shared their choices. Betting sites even allowed wagers on potential laureates, highlighting the high stakes involved in this year's prize. That's all from our Toronto studios. Thank you for watching Muslim News. We are a community channel dedicated to bringing you stories you can trust. Please like, share, and subscribe to our content. You can also comment to let us know what you think of our coverage. You can donate now by visiting muslimnetwork.tv/donate. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum.